Imagine leaving everything behind, your family, your home, your entire life, for a chance at unimaginable wealth. Now imagine that journey could kill you. In 1849, over 300,000 people made exactly that choice. They called it gold fever, and it transformed America forever. What would you risk for a fortune? Would you sail around the tip of South America through deadly storms, trek across disease-ridden jungles, or face the merciless desert with nothing but a dream and a pickaxe? Today, we're diving into Bill Yenne's incredible chronicle of the gold rush, a tale of ambition, desperation, and the human spirit pushed to its absolute limits. But here's what most people don't know. The real fortune wasn't found in the gold fields. Stick around, because by the end of this story, you'll discover who actually got rich and why everything you thought you knew about the gold rush is probably wrong. January 24th, 1848. James Marshall spots something glittering in the American River at Sutter's Mill, California. This single moment would trigger the largest mass migration in American history. But the path to those gold fields was paved with more suffering than most could imagine. Bill Yenne takes us through the eyes of those who lived it. The dreamers, the desperate, and the doomed. These weren't just prospectors. They were farmers, merchants, criminals, and gentlemen. They came from every continent, united by one thing: gold fever. The news spread like wildfire. By December 1848, President James K. Polk confirmed the discovery in his State of the Union address, giving it official credibility. That was all America needed to hear. Within months, entire towns on the East Coast were emptied as men abandoned their families, their businesses, their farms, everything, for California gold. This wasn't rational behavior. This was a fever, a mania, a collective delusion that gripped the nation. Newspapers fueled it with exaggerated stories of nuggets the size of fists lying on the ground, just waiting to be picked up. Stories of men becoming millionaires overnight. The reality would be devastatingly different. 3 main routes led to California, and each was a gamble with death itself. Yenne meticulously details the horrors of each path, and they're almost unimaginable to modern minds. The sea route around Cape Horn meant 6 to 8 months on cramped, disease-ridden ships. Picture being stuck below deck with hundreds of other men, sleeping in bunks stacked 3 or 4 high, with barely room to turn over. The air thick with the stench of unwashed bodies, vomit, and human waste. Storms off South America's tip capsized vessels regularly. Passengers faced scurvy, dysentery, and starvation. Many ships never made it. Those that did arrive with half their passengers dead or dying. The conditions were so horrific that mutinies were common. Captains were often inexperienced. Ships were overcrowded and unseaworthy. Some vessels literally fell apart mid-voyage. Others caught fire. Men went insane for months at sea. When ships finally rounded Cape Horn, they faced some of the most treacherous waters on Earth. Waves taller than buildings. Winds that could snap masts like twigs. The Panama shortcut seemed smarter. Sail to Panama. Cross the isthmus. Catch another ship north. But that jungle crossing, it was a death trap. The 50-mile trek through dense rainforest took weeks under brutal conditions. Yellow fever, malaria, and cholera ravaged travelers. Bodies lined the trails, left to rot because there was no time or energy to bury them properly. Yenne described scenes of absolute desperation. Men crawling through mud, delirious with fever, abandoned by their companions who feared contagion. The few local guides demanded exorbitant fees, knowing these Americans had no choice but to pay. Some waited months in Panama City for a ship north, dying in squalid camps while their money ran out and tropical diseases consumed them. The ones who survived often arrived in California already broken, having spent their entire fortune just getting there. Then there was the overland trail, 2,000 miles of hell. Yenne brings his journey to vivid life through personal accounts and letters. Wagon trains stretched for miles, families abandoning furniture, pianos, books. Anything would wait, to lighten their loads as oxen died from exhaustion. The trail was marked by graves, abandoned wagons, and the bones of thousands of animals. The journey typically began in Missouri in the spring, after the snows melted, but early enough to cross the Sierra Nevada before winter. Families sold everything they owned to outfit themselves with wagons, oxen, months of supplies. They had no idea what awaited them. The first weeks were almost pleasant, an adventure across prairie grasslands. But then came the deserts. Water sources were days apart. The sun was merciless. Oxen died by the hundreds, their carcasses marking the trail. People fought over water. Cholera swept through wagon trains, killing dozens in days. Bodies were buried in shallow graves that wolves would dig up within hours. Native American tribes, understandably hostile to this invasion of their lands, attacked wagon trains. But disease killed far more than arrows ever did. Yenne notes that by some estimates, 1 in 10 who attempted the overland journey died before reaching California. Entire families were wiped out. Children watched their parents die. Parents buried their children along the trail and kept moving because stopping meant death for everyone. The most horrifying moment came at the Sierra Nevada mountains. Timing was everything. Arrive too late, and winter snows would trap you. The Donner Party's cannibalistic nightmare was fresh in everyone's mind. Wagon trains race against time and weather, pushing exhausted animals and people beyond their limits. Some made it, many didn't. After months of hell, survivors finally reached California. What did they find? Yenne's descriptions are stark and disillusioning. San Francisco was a city of tents and mud, thrown up almost overnight, where violence ruled and justice came from vigilante mobs, where fortunes changed hands nightly in gambling tents, where a single egg cost $1, equivalent to about $30 today. A simple meal might cost a week's wages back east. Hotel rooms, if you could find one, cost astronomical sums. Most men slept on the ground or in canvas tents that provided no protection from California's cold, damp winters. Ships lay abandoned in the harbor, their crews having deserted to the gold fields. Some were converted into hotels, stores, even jails. The city expanded by the day, with new buildings going up constantly, most of them flimsy wooden structures that burned down regularly. San Francisco suffered major fires repeatedly, each time rebuilding bigger and faster. Crime was everywhere. Robbery, murder, assault, daily occurrences. The law was whatever the strongest men said it was. Vigilante committees formed, dispensing rough justice that often meant hanging someone from the nearest tree based on the thinnest evidence. But in a city full of desperate men, far from home and civilization, what else could anyone expect? Yenne paints the gold fields themselves as scenes of frantic chaos. Thousands of men, standing knee-deep in icy rivers, panning for gold from dawn until dark. The work was brutally physical. Squat in freezing water for 12 hours, shoveling gravel into a pan, swirling it, hoping to see the glint of gold. Your back screams. Your hands are raw and bleeding. Your legs go numb from the cold. The lucky ones found a few dollars a day, barely enough to cover their inflated expenses. Most found nothing. Many spent weeks without finding a single flake of gold. The work was backbreaking, the living conditions primitive, and the competition ruthless. Mining camps sprang up overnight with names like Hangtown, Rough and Ready Helltown, and Devil's Gate. These weren't towns. They were anarchic gatherings of desperate men living in tents and lean-tos. No women, no families, no civilization. Just men and gold fever. Justice was brutal and swift. Steal someone's gold, and you'd be hanged within the hour. Murder someone, same result. There were no jails, no courts, no due process. Just mob rule and rough justice. Yenne includes accounts of men hanged on the flimsiest evidence, sometimes just because they were unpopular or foreign. The early easy gold, the surface deposits, the nuggets you could pick up, was gone within a year. What remained required serious excavation. Men dug deeper, formed companies, pooled resources. They diverted entire streams, stripped hillsides, dug enormous pits. The work became industrial, requiring capital and equipment the average prospector didn't have. Here's the twist that Yenne emphasizes throughout his narrative. The people who got genuinely rich weren't the miners. They were the merchants, the service providers, the entrepreneurs who sold to the miners. Levi Strauss didn't mine for gold. He sold sturdy canvas pants to miners who kept tearing their regular clothes. Those pants became Levi's jeans, a fortune built not on gold, but on serving those who sought it. Sam Brannan became California's first millionaire through pure entrepreneurial genius. When he heard about Marshall's discovery, he quietly bought every shovel, pan, and pick in the region. Then he walked through San Francisco announcing the discovery, holding up a bottle of gold dust. The stampede began. Brannan sold the supplies at enormous markups. He made money whether miners struck gold or not. Hotels, saloons, supply stores, shipping companies, restaurants, laundries. These enterprises built lasting fortunes. A woman who simply baked pies could make more money selling them to hungry miners than most miners made digging for gold. Prostitutes and gamblers extracted gold from miners far more efficiently than the miners extracted it from the earth. Yenne emphasizes this irony repeatedly. The gold rush created wealth, just not for the gold seekers. The infrastructure that served them, the businesses that supplied them, the services they needed, that's where the real money was made. It's a lesson that applies to every boom throughout history, but one that each generation seems to learn anew. Yenne illustrates how the gold rush didn't just create individual fortunes. It transformed an entire region almost overnight in ways that still shape America today. California went from a remote Mexican territory with about 14,000 non-native residents to a booming state of hundreds of thousands in just a few years. By 1850, California had enough population to become a state, skipping the usual territorial phase entirely. This was unprecedented in American history. San Francisco evolved from a sleepy settlement of a few hundred people into a major city of 25,000 within 2 years. Banks, theaters, newspapers, schools, all the trappings of civilization appeared almost overnight. Wells Fargo was founded to serve the gold rush. The Bank of California financed mining operations. These institutions outlived the gold rush by more than a century. Agriculture followed the miners. Someone had to feed all these people, and California's climate proved perfect for farming. Wheat, fruit, vegetables. California agriculture began as a service industry to the gold rush and grew into one of the state's major economic engines. The Transcontinental Railroad became inevitable. The nation needed a reliable way to reach California, and the gold rush provided both the justification and, eventually, some of the financing. When the Golden Spike was driven in 1869, connecting the nation by rail, it was the gold rush that had made it economically viable. The entire American West was now connected to the nation's consciousness and economy. Before the gold rush, California was a distant, almost mythical place. After it, the West was part of America's destiny, its future, its identity. But this transformation came at a devastating cost that Yenne doesn't shy away from describing. Native American populations were decimated, killed outright in what amounted to genocide, displaced from ancestral lands, or destroyed by disease. Some estimates suggest California's Native American population dropped by 80% during the gold rush decades. Entire tribes disappeared. Languages died. Cultures were erased. The environmental damage was catastrophic and permanent. Hydraulic mining, blasting hillside with high-pressure water cannons, destroyed entire landscapes. Millions of tons of sediment washed into rivers, destroying salmon runs and flooding farmland downstream. Mercury, used in gold processing, poisoned rivers and soil. That mercury is still there, still toxic, still killing wildlife over 150 years later. Forests were clear-cut to build mining equipment and towns. Streams were diverted, dammed, drained. The California landscape was permanently altered by the gold rush, and not for the better. Yenne dedicates significant attention to the Chinese immigrants who came seeking Gold Mountain, their name for California. Their story is one of resilience against systematic oppression and deserves special focus. Chinese immigrants faced discrimination that American miners didn't. Special taxes aimed specifically at them, exclusion from the best claims by force, and violent racism that frequently turned deadly. They were barred from testifying in court against white people, meaning crimes against them went unpunished. Yet they persevered. Chinese miners often worked claims others had abandoned as played out, and through patient, systematic work, they extracted gold that impatient American miners had missed. They were willing to work harder for less return, which made them valuable as laborers but also targets of resentment. Chinese immigrants established their own communities within mining camps and cities, maintaining their culture, language, and traditions in a hostile environment. They created support networks, associations based on home region or family name, that helped newcomers and protected members from persecution. Despite facing laws specifically designed to drive them out, like the foreign miners tax, which targeted Chinese miners specifically, they became an integral part of California's development. When mining declined, Chinese workers built the Transcontinental Railroad, doing the most dangerous work for the lowest pay. They died by the hundreds blasting tunnels through mountains, but their work connected America. Their story is one of perseverance against seemingly impossible odds, of maintaining dignity in the face of systematic dehumanization, of building community when the larger society wanted them gone. By the mid-1850s, the easy gold was gone. What remained required expensive equipment and capital, meaning corporations, not individuals. The lone prospector with a pan was obsolete, replaced by industrial mining operations with hydraulic equipment, stamp mills, and wage laborers. Many 49ers never returned home. Some died on the journey or in the fields. Others, too ashamed of their failure to face their families who had sacrificed so much for their journey, simply disappeared into the West. Some found new lives, new opportunities, new identities. They became farmers, merchants, laborers, anything but miners. The letters home told stories of success even when there was none. Men couldn't admit to wives and parents that they'd failed, that the fortune would never come, that the sacrifice had been for nothing. So they lied, sent a little money when they could, promised success was just around the corner. Yenne explores the lasting psychological impact. Gold fever created a particularly American mythology about instant wealth, westward expansion, and rugged individualism. It shaped how Americans saw themselves and their nation's destiny. The idea that you could reinvent yourself, strike it rich through pluck and determination, escape your circumstances. These became core American beliefs. The gold rush also established patterns that would repeat throughout American history. The boom and bust cycle, the rush to new opportunities, the willingness to abandon everything for a chance at wealth, the exploitation of natural resources without thought for consequences, the displacement of indigenous peoples in the name of progress. What can we learn from this mass delusion, this fever that gripped a nation? Yenne's book offers several enduring lessons. First, the promise of quick wealth makes people irrational. Educated men abandon successful careers for a chance at gold. Fathers left families they would never see again. The risk-reward calculation was absurd. Most lost everything, yet hundreds of thousands made it anyway. This same pattern repeats in every speculative bubble. Tulips, railroads, tech stocks, real estate, cryptocurrency. The faces change, the commodity changes, but gold fever remains. Second, infrastructure and services create more reliable wealth than speculation. The merchants, the service providers, the builders, they created sustainable businesses, while miners went boom and bust. In every gold rush, literal or metaphorical, the people selling picks and shovels make consistent money, while the prospectors gamble everything. Third, the cost of rapid development is often hidden and paid by others. Native Americans paid with their lives and lands. The environment paid with permanent damage. Future generations paid with polluted rivers and destroyed landscapes. These costs weren't calculated in the gold extracted or the fortunes made. This pattern, too, repeats throughout history. The true cost of development is externalized, paid by those with no voice in the decision. Fourth, community matters more than individual wealth. Those who succeeded, who built lasting lives in California, did so by working together, by building institutions, by creating civilization rather than chasing fortune. The lone prospector usually failed. Communities thrived. What makes Yenne's account compelling is his focus on individual stories within this massive movement. These weren't abstract historical forces. They were people with hopes, fears, and dreams. The family man who left behind a wife and children, promising to return rich in a year, who never returned at all because he couldn't face them with his failure. His wife, waiting, eventually remarrying, never knowing his fate. The freed slave who saw California as a place without slavery, only to find different forms of oppression. Some free black Americans did find opportunity and built successful lives, but many found the racism of the East had followed them west. The the woman who disguised herself as a man to seek her fortune in a male-dominated world. Women were so rare in early California that their presence caused riots. Those who came found opportunities unavailable back east, running businesses, owning property, living independently, but at enormous personal risk and hardship. The teenager who lied about his age to join a wagon train, seeking adventure, who died of cholera weeks from home, buried in an unmarked grave on the prairie by strangers who took his possessions and moved on. These individual stories give texture to the larger narrative, reminding us that history isn't made by forces and movements, but by individual human choices, hopes, and tragedies. So here's the question that ties all of this together, and it's one that's just as relevant today as it was in 1849. When everyone's chasing the same dream, who really profits? Think about it carefully. Every gold rush in history, whether it's literal gold, tech startups, cryptocurrency, NFTs, or real estate, follows the same pattern. The masses rush in chasing wealth. Most lose everything. A few get lucky, and their stories fuel the next wave. But the ones who consistently profit, they're selling the picks and shovels. They're providing the infrastructure. They're making money whether the prospectors succeed or fail. Bill Yenne's chronicle of the gold rush isn't just history. It's a blueprint for understanding human nature, economic bubbles, and the American psyche. The 49ers thought they were chasing gold, but what they were really chasing was a dream of transformation, of escaping their ordinary lives for something extraordinary. Most failed catastrophically, but their collective failure built California, transformed America, and created myths we still live by today. The West was won not by the prospectors who struck it rich, but by the people who built the infrastructure, who created communities, who stuck it out after the gold was gone. The gold rush teaches us about ambition and its costs, about dreams and their price, about what we're willing to sacrifice for a chance at fortune, and whether that sacrifice is ever truly worth it. For most 49ers, the answer was no. But we keep forgetting that lesson with each new boom, each new opportunity, each new fever that grips us. So here's my question for you. If you were alive in 1849, would you have caught gold fever? Would you have abandoned everything, your family, your security, your life, for a chance at fortune? Would you have risked death crossing an ocean, a jungle, or a desert for gold that probably wasn't there? Or would you have been smart enough to stay home and open a general store in San Francisco, selling supplies to the dreamers at inflated prices? Think carefully before you answer. It's easy to say you'd be the smart one, the merchant, not the miner. But gold fever didn't strike stupid people. It struck everyone. Educated men, successful businessmen, careful planners, all caught the fever. What makes you think you'd be immune? Drop your answer in the comments below. I genuinely want to know what kind of 49er you would have been. The dreamer or the merchant, the prospector or the service provider. And more importantly, what modern gold rushes are you chasing right now without realizing it? And if you enjoyed this deep dive into one of history's most fascinating mass movements, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're exploring the stories that shaped our world, the adventures that defined generations, and the lessons history still has to teach us, if we're willing to listen. Next week, we're diving into another incredible tale of ambition and adventure that changed everything. Another story of people who risked it all for a dream, and what happened when that dream collided with reality. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the real gold isn't what everyone's digging for. It's what you build while they're distracted digging. The fortune is in serving the fever, not catching it. That's a lesson the 49ers learned too late. But maybe we can learn from their mistakes. See you next week, Gold Seekers.